Welcome,
Okay.
welcome to Zapple Tech. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. So it's really difficult to pronounce my name because it's Marchewka. It's really super
Oh,
Polish name. Yes,
I
but
gave
no
it four
worries.
shots. Thank you, Marheka. Okay, okay. I've got that. Cool. Just to let everybody know, if you're joining us right now, usually my camera is working. For some reason, my camera decided as of this morning not to work, and I'm going to be heading out to go get myself an emergency camera after this, so this will never happen again. Um, So a little bit about you over here. So she enjoys presenting at different conferences besides technical ones. Often speaks at soft skills on that, and she also likes to bake bread and cookies and all sorts of cool stuff. Which I like to eat bread and cookies, so that is cool. And in fact, we were just talking about the last thing about doing metrics and stuff, and I tend to mention, like, how do you get 100% automation with one third the size of developers? We're all developers, we're all writing code at about the same speed. How do you keep up with that? Because yeah, be honest, automation is not, and really hasn't been, record and playback for a very, very long time. You really got to take it seriously. We are a development project. So Ewa, with that, I'm gonna throw it over to you and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. So let me try to share my screen. Uh, oh, I can even share just one. Uh, wait. Sorry, this is my first time to this. Uh, to this. Okay,
That's
hopefully
okay.
this
I'm right
works.
there with you.
Yeah, I'm a manager, so it's not so easy for me to um okay. Yay, it worked. But does it
Awesome,
work
we
full
got you.
screen? Does it work full
Okay.
screen? Yes. Amazing. Okay. Okay, so I'm ready to go. So hello everyone. As I was so thoroughly introduced, my name is Ewa Marchewka, and for today's speech, I have a topic for you: automated or manual. What can go wrong when a test team starts their journey into the world of automation? Um, okay, does it work if I change it here? No? Okay, I need to do this, right? Oh, right. Okay, hopefully. Sorry. One few more minutes so that I make my desktop right and I can go. Yeah, so as I mentioned, my name is Ewa Marchewka. I'm currently working as a Productization Director, which is maybe not super common title, but it basically means that I'm managing a team of around 200 people, testers, mostly testers. I have over 18 years of experience in testing. I started as a tester, and I'm super proud of my testing background. And I really enjoy presenting. I really like giving speeches, both technical and soft skill ones. If you would like to, listen to something interesting, you can see me on Test Dive or HASTEF or TestCon conferences. Be sure not to miss those. Here is a short agenda, what I will be talking about. I will start with some common pitfalls. There was a mention about let's automate everything idea, and I would like to tell you why this is not a good idea. A little bit about test environment, unification, human factor, and a real life example how to do it right. I've been listening to the previous speech, and I've noticed that this was fairly technical one with a lot of important details. I hope you are ready for a little bit more high level speech, maybe a little bit more from a strategist point of view than low level details. Before I move on, I would like to add here one more disclaimer. Um, I work in a company that's called Nokia. You probably see, the logo in the corner. That has a very specific test environment. What we are doing, we are testing base stations. So we are testing hardware together with software, and sometimes we are adding third-party equipment on top of it. So when I say automation, it's a little bit different than what you can have in mind when you are thinking about it. So there is a little bit more on the top of it. So maybe for some of you, this will be a very fresh perspective, something that you haven't thought about. Let me know in the comments and we can discuss after the presentation is finished. So let's start with what can go wrong. Usually, when there is a team of manual testers, let's say there is a small company and the company for some time has been growing. At some point, they decided, hey, we are doing a lot of manual work. Let's start automation. Usually, bosses, management tends to get overexcited because automation is a super cool buzzword. Automation saves time, automation saves money, so let's automate everything. Let's have a KPI, key performance indicator, for 100% automation. So you can ask yourself, is it a good idea? Those of you who are more experienced probably know the answer, but let me show you, let me tell you, let me bring to you a use case that will somehow maybe make it a little bit more um, obvious to you. So, social networking website use case. This is a real use case. This is something that really happened in one of the companies. Um, so, um, there was a company that decided to create an internal social media, something like Facebook or X or whatever, just internal for the employees, right? So employees would post some interesting, you know, uh, highlights of their everyday work or some important events that happened on one technology center or something like this, right? Something to share with people, some achievements, some super cool projects, etc., etc. So the company thought it is a good idea to introduce something like this. Um, and in order to make it more popular, obviously, what management can do, they created a metric that would measure how many times you would post something on this social networking website. And if you would have, many posts, you would get a prize, a cup, or whatever. One thing that the managers sometimes forget is that they are managing a team of engineers that are smart and they want to make their lives easier. So there was one guy that decided to automate. So he was smart, so he thought, okay, every time there is a post on this social networking website, I will automatically put a comment underneath it because comments were the same, counted with the same number of points as the main post. So I will just comment. So he decided that he would say good job or well done or great work under each post like this. And everything worked fine until someone put an information about one of the colleagues passing away. And when there was a good job comment beneath it, um, the management decided to discuss this with the engineer, and he explained what he has done. And they said that he should no longer do it, and they worked a little bit more on the security of the social networking website, so this would never happen again. This story shows that it's never a good idea to automate everything. There are some exceptions. So I told you that we should never automate posts on a social media. This doesn't work. But what else we should not automate? From my experience, user interface, any tests that require checking whether the site looks good or whether the colors are nice or something that really, really requires human intervention. So user experience testing should never be automated. This is something that still, I don't know, maybe in the future AI will take over. But for now, only a human can do a proper user experience test when it comes to colors or usability of the page. Exploratory. From my experience, exploratory testing is the coolest part of testing. You can disagree with me, but this is how I see it. Exploratory testing, meaning when you take your product and try to break it in a super cool ways, it's something that you cannot automate upfront. Of course, if you will find a nice scenario during exploratory testing and you will find a bug, you can automate it later on. But the exploratory testing process should not be automated. Test with unpredictable outcome. If you don't know what is the expected outcome of your test, don't automate it. If you need to, look into requirements or check something somewhere else to make sure that that this test has passed, then it's better done manually. Okay, something happened. Did I stop sharing, or you can still see me and hear me?
Moment, you're back with us. Maybe I think you're
Okay.
out for about 10 seconds.
Okay, so hopefully, I don't know what happened, but I'm back, so let me continue. So do it now tests. When the customer is waiting for reproduction of an issue, or where is waiting for something to be done very fast, don't start with automation. You will never do it right the first time, and the customer will be very frustrated that he needs to wait. And last but not least, test with low return on investment. Um, I'm sure that most of you know what is ROI and return on investment, but maybe to have us all on the same page. Return on investment is a measure of the profitability of investment. So whether it is worth doing, whether something is worth doing, whether automating of a test makes sense because it will have a proper return. So we will save time, or we will save money, or we will save something else. The equation for return on investment is pretty straightforward, right? It's gain minus investment divided by investment. However, in testing, it's quite difficult to grasp in details what is gain and what is investment. It can be tricky at sometimes. Here is what I use when we are doing some assessment of newly created manual tests, whether we should automate them or not. So first, obviously, the most important thing that we want to have here is saved effort. So we check how many times do we plan to run the test case. If we plan to run it one time, straightforward, no need to automate it. Longevity of a single test. This is important for a few reasons. First, if a test takes quite a long time, the tester time is also wasted. So if we automate tests that is lasting for quite a long time, we save testers' effort. But we also we also increase usability of a test line. So if we have a very long test and it's automated, we can run it overnight. So the test environment is used all the time. This is also important, especially when your test environment costs a lot. And I will be talking about it a little bit later. So longevity of a single test, increase efficiency of a test environment using our test environment in full. What is our investment? Obviously, script creation. We need to write the scripts. We need to build or update automation framework if we need to do it. I do keywords, whatever. We need to train the testers. If we have fresh team that's been doing manual testing their whole their lives, and we want them to start automating, we need to take time to train them. Maintenance. It's never, it's never like this that you write a test and it's there 100% of the time and you don't need to do anything, right? You need to maintain it, you need to change it, you need to update it. Something that is very specific for my company and for my test environment is that In many cases, you need to duplicate or stabilize test environment. Imagine having a very big test environment um, that has let's say how do I explain it correctly? So let's say that this test environment consists of two things: baseband and radio unit, right? And the baseband can stay the same, but we need to change radio units to perform the same test on different radio units. If we are doing this test manually, um, we can just change the radio unit and repeat it. But if we want to do it automatically, we need to duplicate this test environment, so we don't need manual intervention during test during run of a test. Same goes for the stabilizing test environment. Test environment can be unstable, especially in my case when I'm working with over-the-air interface between base station and mobile phone. You need to stabilize it uh, to prevent manual intervention during the script running. If the test environment is unstable, the results of your test are also unstable, so you cannot rely on it. So to sum it up, if you are looking from a high level perspective, like a manager perspective or a test leader perspective, you can um, summarize this whole return on investment discussion into 3V rule. We automate tests that are high in volume, so we need to run them often. We need to automate tests that have low variance, so we don't need to update them often. And we need to automate tests that have high value. So either the test equipment that we are running them on is expensive, or time of a single run is quite long. All right. Test environment. Now I would like to talk to you a little bit about test environment. So I don't know if this is true, but I can imagine that most of you are working with pretty simple test environment, like PC or UE. I might be wrong, but you know, just for the sake of this presentation, I will assume that most of you works with a environment like this. So that kind of environment is pretty cheap and easy to duplicate and quite stable, right? Um, but if you are working with a complicated test environment, like for example, base station, that has to communicate with a third party mobile that is not produced by the same company, and there's a lot of third party equipment like this. There are different UE types, and maybe not only UEs, but other devices that are connecting to base stations. And at the other end, we have a core network that also comes from different vendors. So that kind of test environment is really complicated and in many cases really, really expensive. So if you have multiple complicated test environments, you need to be very careful which tests you want to automate and which tests you want to run manually to make sure that your test environment is used in a proper way, because it costs money, obviously. Another aspect that is really important when you are thinking about automating is unification or framework selection. I know that most probably you have something already in your company that is working, but if um, if we are just starting, if you are starting automation, if a test team has been doing everything manually, we can we might find ourselves in a situation when we don't have any framework, or we have some very basic in-house automation frameworks that are scattered around the company. So someone wrote something to make his or her life easier, and the same thing was done by someone else from a different part of the company. So we have this wide variety of frameworks, but we don't want that, right? Of course, having different automation frameworks is costly. We don't have reusability in such a situation. We have high maintenance costs because we need to maintain the same scenarios in two different frameworks or more different frameworks. There is no way to port that stuff. So it's a waste of time and money. When it comes to selecting automation framework, mm, you need to take into account a couple of things. The first is obviously cost, and cost of the framework, cost of the licenses, or in some cases, if you want to develop something in-house, cost of the engineer's work. User experience. I'm not talking here about whether the framework is pretty, but how fast people from your company can start to use it. Functionality. You can select the best framework in the world. If it doesn't have a functionality you need, it makes no sense to use it. And last but not least, support. Mm, I have been in a situation when there was a framework selected that had no support whatsoever. It was very good, but it was dead. And we had to change it at some point because it wasn't developed. So we couldn't add any features that we needed. Um, Last but not least thing that we need to take into account when we are implementing such a big change, except for selection of framework, making sure that our test environment is selected properly, etc., is human factor. Uh, in companies that are managed by engineers, for example, Nokia, because in Nokia usually we grow our managers, so people that have been engineers usually at some point, some of them decide to go into the management path and they become managers. So people that were engineers very often forget about human factor. And human factor is really critical when it comes to change management. So this psychological aspect, when you are implementing such a huge change, moving from manual to automated, can result in pushback. Those are all sentences that I have heard at some point when we were moving from manual to automated. I am a tester, not a developer. I don't want to write code. I'm doing, engineering job down in the laboratory, so leave me alone. This thing is totally unstable. I don't want to use it. It does not have the functionality that I need, and I'm not gonna write it. I want it to be there. I have my own. I have written some small framework that works for me. I don't want to use anything else. And I think that this is the worst one. It's faster this way. I am doing it manually. I don't need to automate it because it's faster. And before I write a script, I will already run it. So I don't want it. Those are all the comments from the testers that were doing manual work. Um, yeah, and this is something that you need to take into account and handle it somehow. So this psychological aspect, if the change management is not performed right, can lead to pushback, can lead to blocking the changes. Um, Team will not want to change their way of working. They would like to stay with the old times. They don't want to move forward. They want to still do everything as they have done it before. So in best case, they will just not accept the change. In worst case, they will proactively sabotage the change. For example, I saw a case when a team was maintaining their own automation framework in secret, even though the selected one was quite different, and they were supposed to move to this one. And in the end, the testers might decide to leave the company if they are not happy with what is going on. So for now, I told you how to do it wrong or what are the challenges that you can see. You can have, a boss that wants to automate everything. You can have issues with selection of automation framework. You can have issues with test environment. And last but not least, you can struggle with team attitude. So now I would like to show you a true story, something that really happened at some point in time. It was some time ago, but I think that this story is still useful to that day. So to set the scene, I mentioned it a little bit before, but to set the scene, what we are testing right now and what we were testing manually was hardware plus software. So the hardware was dedicated. So this is a base station. The hardware is created by the company. The software is created by the company. So you have already some hardware software interaction. Then there is third party hardware. This is a user equipment, UE or mobile phone or tablet or whatever. It's not created by the company. It's a third party, so it's coming outside of the company. And what what gave us big trouble really, over the air interface. As you know, and because you are using mobile phones in everyday's life, you connect to base station through the air, right? So you can imagine similar scenario needs to be tested in laboratory, and over the air interface is pretty unstable. you know Someone walks by and it's distracted. So if you want, for example, to test maximum throughput of data, it's tricky, right? Because you need to have everything really stabilized in order to automate such a scenario. Because if you do it manually, you see, okay, someone walked by, I need to repeat the test. In automation tests, you don't have that possibility. So what the challenges do we had? First, test environment, as I mentioned, unstable, complicated, and on the top of it, it was really expensive. Mm, some uh, uh, some uh, some environments to test over the air interface is super expensive. You need to build a special chamber or a special tunnel that has absorbing material inside, and you need to log all your test environment in there. And that kind of tunnel or chamber can be really really expensive. Another challenge we had was the automation framework. There was no unification. We had three different automation framework. Robot was one of them, but other ones were in-house built, so they had a lot of flaws. And the last was a human factor. There was people were reluctant to change because they were super proud of being, manual testers that work with a real equipment and they could use their engineering skills. So they didn't want to change it to sitting in the front of computer and writing a script. So how did we handle unstable test environment? What we did when we could and when it made sense, we changed UEs, third-party equipment, to simulators that would simulate perfect UE, like the one that's acting accordingly to 3GPP standard. Those simulators are also expensive, but in some cases, they are worth it because, for example, they can simulate multiple UEs, so we could test more scenarios. Um, we had dedicated test lines for automated tests. Those were the ones that were supposed not to be touched. No manual changing of a test line, so that they are always the same, and we can exclude environmental issues coming from someone, poking around a cable or something like this. And the last thing that was quite interesting and it worked really well was no manual workarounds policy. So we noticed at the beginning that people were writing scripts, automated scripts, but if they were failing, they would go to the laboratory, do some manual tweaking, and run them once again. So we introduced that the policy that you should never do that. you should always make sure that your environment is stable enough to run automated test case without any sorry, intervention. Expensive equipment. What have we done with expensive equipment? We introduced a strategy considering a return on investment. So some of the cases were left manual because we figure out it will cost us more to, for example, duplicate a test environment than to run this 1 or 2 or 3 test cases manually, let's say every 2 weeks. Universal solutions. We tried to create our environments as universal as possible so that we can run a lot of automated test cases on the same environment. So we have one expensive environment, but it's universal. It's, for example, serving a lot of customers, and we are running the test cases on this one. We also invested into in-house solutions. For example, for simulators that I mentioned at the beginning, we also created an in-house solution that's much cheaper. Of course, we had to develop it first, so it costs us, but now we don't need to buy expensive simulator from the outside. We are using something that's home built. Now you have unification. So as I mentioned, we had a few different automation frameworks. So what we did, we selected one of them, robot framework, and we introduced a rule that everyone is using it. As I mentioned before, there were people that didn't want to do that. There were people that somehow try to maintain the old ones because they thought that they were better and that they were used to it, so it was easier for them, etc., etc. But at some point, everyone moved to selected framework, and everyone contributed to this one, so we wouldn't waste time. And reluctance to change. I think that this was most difficult one because it's not technical and you cannot measure it. But one thing that was really important when we did that was that communication goes both ways. So implementing. Okay, I think you've lost me for a moment, but I'm back. So I don't know where I stopped, so let me repeat. Implementing useful suggestions. If there was a complaint about, for example, a framework that it's missing something, or about the environment that it's too unstable for automation, then we would listen to those suggestions and we would implement them. For example, we would add something to the framework, or we would keep the test manual. For some of the engineers that were really not happy with moving into automation, we kept, because manual testing is still needed. It will never go away. There are scenarios that cannot be automated. There are scenarios that should not be automated. So those engineers are still working on, for example, integration. In Nokia case, in the case of a base station, integration is a painful process, and it's almost impossible to automate it because there are so many things that can go wrong along the way that manual integration is better. Writing test strategy, this cannot be automated. Exploratory testing, exploratory tests, as I said, this is like the essence of a tester, inventing new cool scenarios to break stuff. Robustness testing, there's a lot of things that still need to be executed or done manually by a tester. So if someone is not into automation, that's also okay. We'll find a place for him or her. So to sum it up, I'm going pretty quick, but I hope there will be some questions. So if you have them, ask them. Um, if you want to, if you have a team that is, running the tests manually, and you want this team to move to automated way of working, there are three things that you need to keep in mind. First is a plan. So you need to understand what your return on investment would be, what tests to automate, what tests not to automate, what everything that will make your road to automation easier. You need to have tools. You need to have a proper automation framework. You need to have a proper test environment. You need to um, you need to have tools. And the last but not least, you need to have people. You need to have people on your side. You need to have people convinced that this is a good way to go. And you need to have people that are prepared for the change and are okay with it. So, thank you for listening. Now, I think there's a time for questions. And if you would like to connect with me, here's my LinkedIn QR code.
That was fantastic. We've got a few questions over here. Thank you, Ewa. Uh, let's see. By the way, your presentation was spot on. I've been doing this for 24 years, and there's everything you mentioned I've gone through and had to deal with. One of the mentions out here is that somebody had said that they had a manager who said, I was fired because the boss said, automate everything or goodbye. It's Pama, I believe. Uh, and yeah, I try and sit down and try to talk them off the ledge when that's coming. You tell me, how do you deal with someone like that? I'll also throw in some experiences I've had in my life and how I take care of them.
How to well, it depends. If this person is reasonable and is open to hard evidence, then I would put hard evidence on the table, and I would probably start with a story about this social media, because it puts everything on the table. And then if he or she wouldn't listen, I would give him a bill. So you want to have everything automated. This is how much you need to pay for duplicating test environment. This is how much you need to pay for this and that. And usually when you show money, then the perception changes.
Yeah. Uh, that is spot on. I will tell you, 20 years ago when I started my getting serious about this, and that's when they stopped having me doing manual testing and had automation full time. One of the things I found was that we found a bug that would have upset a customer to the point they would have gotten rid of us and put in our competitor stuff. It was actually medical equipment, very expensive stuff, and the bug that I found, they said, well, it only happens once every 64 reboots. So what chance is that going to happen? And not 2 weeks later, as they were teaching a user how to use it, they rebooted it for the 63rd time after the install. And to make it simple, we flipped the switch. The light bulb did not go on. The user was very upset and said, "I want you not to charge me for this. Take it all out and put your competitor in." Um, and all of a sudden, the defect that my team found went from "we'll never fix it" to "we got to take care of it right now." And from that, I calculated how many millions of dollars they might have lost just on that single sale. And yeah, as you said, a lot of minds changed really quickly, going, "Wow, there's a return on investment, and it's millions of dollars, and we're only paying him what, a few thousand? This is okay. We get it. We get it." So definitely, when you're doing your ROI, do your try to work in how much money you're saving the company by not getting bad stuff get out there and have your customers go to your competitor and lose that way. I
Yeah.
do also want to share one other thing. You mentioned that thing, which was funny, was on the social media where it's saying, we are sorry to inform that somebody's passed away, and the response was, good job. um, I will also tell you, I had a similar experience at yeah, it was the same job. um, I we needed to upgrade our database, and build a index of all of our tickets that we had. And the only way I could do that was to add a period at the end of every description that I had. And we had about, I don't know, 10,000 tickets, all tracking the requirements and the defects and all that stuff. So I added a period to it. Of course, the one thing I forgot to do was to turn off the notification. And all night long, my boss's pager got message after message after message. And his wife still doesn't talk to me. She's still mad at me for keeping him up all night. Um, but yeah, automation in some cases can be, it's dangerous. I say it's like, you're sometimes I'm just a crazy monkey with a hammer in my hand running around just banging on everything, and sometimes it annoys people. um so
Can I steal your story? I will give you
absolutely.
credit. I will use it. It's fantastic.
I've got lots of them. Another shameless plug. Some of these stories, I don't mention who the companies are, but they are sometimes mentioned in one of our book, the book I've got, Enhanced Test Automation with WebDriver IO. So if you want to hear some more of the crazy stories, you can hear that. Or you can go to testtalks.com and Joe Colantonio. Every Halloween episode, I talk about some other crazy story that's happened in my life. We've done it 6 or 8 times. Okay, enough plugging my own stuff over here. Let me see. Um, oh yeah, I wanted to get back to this. Like, actually, automate everything. When I go and talk to a manager, I come to them and say, look, there's a couple of reasons why you can't set this at 100% coverage. You mentioned every reason that is really good out there. Like some things you just can't. It's better off with manual testers, exploratory testing, absolutely. Um, but one thing I always said is like, let's set it at 80%. And if I can show that I've automated 80% of your manual tests or 80% of your requirements, that's great. Except it's going to take us time. It always takes us, 3 months, 6 months to maybe get to that point if we're starting fresh. And the problem is what do those developers do? They add more functionality to the product, or the testing team adds more test cases. So we're always going to be behind the 8 ball. We'll never be able to get to 100% because there's just more stuff being added. So I try and keep within that 80% there to say, okay, that's cool. And also, as I mentioned earlier, how many STETs do we have versus the developers? If we all write code at the same speed, we're going to be writing stuff a little bit slower than the 10-person team. If I got 3 people on the team, can I ask you how many people are on your QA team? Is that something I can ask?
Sure, sure. I have around 200 people, including managers.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well,
That's a
that's
big
that's
one.
that's got to be scaled agile. If I know, that's amazing. 200. I'm looking to be a project manager. If I get 10, I'm happy. But oh my gosh, there's been times where I've had like 3, and the there's 3 people, and the number of developers I've got is 10. So it's like, and how long when did they start the automation? Oh, 2 years after they started building the application. I'm like, wow, am I really behind the ball? This is crazy. Let's see. By the way, we got a few extra minutes here, so if you have any questions, please throw them in up here. I do see a couple have come in since I started telling all these wonderful stories here. Let's see. So Cerdas is asking a question. Already exploratory testing does not any pattern, so we cannot automate till we find the exact pattern. But when we should begin the automation process, when do you
Okay.
think about when? Oh, I know the answer to this one. Go ahead, Ewa.
Okay, so let's see if our answers match. So, exploratory testing is something that you just do, like, okay, let me try this, let me try that, and you should not automate it upfront, of course.
Yes.
But if you find something interesting, your base station explodes or reboots or whatever, then it's good thing to automate it. Like, the steps that you've used to bring this your product into this stage. So afterwards, yeah, not before.
I'm going to say the question she asked there was I'm sorry, he asked there, my apologies, was when we should begin the automation process. And I'm always saying, yesterday, the day that you started the developers to start writing some code to create your application isn't even done yet. that's the day you should start talking about your automation. And I know everyone says, but there's no application to test. And I say, yeah, that's true, but there are things that you're going to bump into. I call them the Loch Ness monster, Bigfoot. It's just stuff that you never expected that would happen. And if you can get a jump start on what's going to come your way, and you're a little bit more prepared, that works out better, especially if they're
Yep.
just giving you, okay, I've got 2 buttons on the interface. I know we'll have 25 later. See if you can click these 2 buttons. And they're like, great. There's no text to identify these at all. It's all done in Flutter. How the heck am I going to click this thing? um, yeah, sooner
Yep.
the better. You're always going to be behind the ball on that.
Yep. Yeah, if you put it like that, maybe I misunderstood the question a bit.
Oh,
So yeah, I agree that you need to start automating as soon as requirements are ready. Even if code is not ready, you need to start thinking about automation. Maybe preparing some keywords, maybe checking if the scenarios or the use cases provided by architecture are even possible to be tested or are even possible to be automated. So I agree, as fast as possible, as soon in the product life cycle as possible.
yeah. And I think it was actually 2 questions that Serta was asking. The exploratory testing, I absolutely agree with you. Not something you really want to try and automate. There is a brilliant guy out there who says it can be done, exploratory testing and automated, uh, but he's the only guy I know who's ever attempted it. So um, I'll we'll move on from there. AI is starting to become a very big thing. There's generative AI. There are a lot of managers think that's going to replace it. The one pitfall I see managers falling into is that, oh, we can get rid of the manual testers because we have the automation scripts. The problem is that the manual testers also need to analyze the results. You need to have someone out there saying, hey, yeah, there's a problem, and not just have an email account that's getting filled that nobody ever looks at. You're asking for trouble if you're trying to do that. Keep your manual testers, as Ewa said, keep them, have something for them to do. You need them. Exploratory testing is fantastic on that. All right, let's see. Peter says if that manager wants 100%, then run. Yeah. Before you run, sit down with them, try to do the math, and show them, hey, we're going to save you some money. We're going to get to 80% of coverage. And also, a lot of managers, I don't believe that the goal of automation is to find defects. I say that that's more of a byproduct of it. All automation really does is verify that it passed last time and it passes this time. You didn't break anything. If it breaks something, then yeah, there's a benefit of saying, oh, we found that. So cool. Amaruda asks, what do you think about automating deploying, redeploying, installing, uninstalling new releases of the web app that you are working on? Are they good candidates for automation?
From my perspective, they are perfect candidates for automation because customer does it thousands of times. If something you mentioned before about the 64th reboot,
Reboot.
right?
Yeah.
So if you have this installing on uninstalling, you do it once in your test scenario, but then the customer has, I don't know, 10,000 sites where he or she will deploy your product, then he or she will do this installing and uninstalling process 10,000 times. So for me, those are the perfect scenarios for automation because you can do how it's called repeatability testing.
Mm.
When you do this hundred of times, thousands of times to make sure that there is no race condition or something. So for me, those basic scenarios, operation and maintenance scenarios, are the ones that should be automated.
Yeah, I think Amaretta is also bringing in the idea maybe of actually an older version. And if you can do that, you can say, okay, hey, I made a change to my automation framework and some data. This test did run on the old version. Can I reinstall the old version and run it and still get the same result? So was the break in the change in the application in the new release, or was the change in the break because I pushed something new into my framework and changed some data along the way? I agree with you, Howard. These are great candidates for automation. Um, Obviously, there's automating, deploying, and redeploying. That also talks a little bit about Jenkins. I automate just the deploy of my framework against the app, the systems. So I use Jenkins to do that. I don't run it manually on my own system. You did also mention running things overnight, which is
Yep,
fantastic. So, you don't spend all morning running your test cases, analyzing during lunch. You run them all in the overnight, and then you do an analysis in the morning. You write
exactly.
new test cases in the over lunchtime, and then you go and write up your defects, your tickets. Um, I wanted to mention you covered so many interesting things on here. Um, I will say that there is one thing that I've come across, and everybody says you also mentioned is that what test cases should you not automate, and you mentioned one-offs. I will tell you that I've had one experience recently that has just blown my mind. I had a one-off. It was testing in a way. What one of my companies had done is they acquired another company. They had about 500 new employees, and they needed to test that the names were correct, the emails were correct, the phone numbers were correct. They had a data table, Excel data table of that. And they came to me. Of course, they were going live with that Monday morning, and they came to me on Friday and said, "Hey, can you write an automation script with that?" I'm like, it's a whole new application. I don't know it. I'd have to write the all the elements for it. I know it's technically only 6 lines of code to go log in, type in someone's name, check these items, and then go to the next. It's a loop, but I don't know about it. At least in my coded version. But I did have access to a non-coded, a codeless version. It was called Test Rigger, and you could just write it off all in plain English and then just connect it to its data table. I was able to do that in about 45 minutes. And not only is 45 minutes just building it, I found one bug. And of course, this is a one-off. Um, I was able to get the rest of my job done during the day, and then at 11 o'clock at night, Sunday night, everybody got online here, and that is that's a reminder. I got to talk to somebody in 6 minutes. Um, we got online at 11 o'clock. We figured it would take us about 3 hours, 4 hours to get all 500 of these things validated. And with the automation script, just in the non-code codeless tool, we were able to get it done in about an hour and a half, and we were fixing it on the fly. And suddenly it dawned on me, like, well, you know what? Maybe one-offs aren't really a an exclusionary thing anymore if you can write the test case in a really quick amount of time. So I'm kind of changing my mind on that. Everything else, yeah, keep with the manual testers.
I I think that, if you are a smart tester that is experienced, you can use always common sense and decide, right?
Yep.
So the rules are general rules, but there are always exceptions to
I,
everything.
I love your rules that you have in there, talking about how to change things. I've also been where I my first automation project, I ran it for 3 years, built the whole thing. It was my little baby, and then another team from nowhere came in and said, "We've got this our own automation tool, and we're gonna take your ideas and see where we can go with them." And I'm like, I had like 25 features over 3 years that, well, okay, we don't do that, and we don't do that. Well, why don't you just use my framework? And I was in the situation where we're like, no, ours is going to be, yeah, we already got it approved, so everybody's going to use that. And I went, okay, that's great. And within 6 months, I actually went and found another company and did another wonderful framework for them. So I don't want to say run, don't run,
Okay.
but be adaptable. Be I like how you put the rules in there in place, and I guess I had to. I'm not sure if that was a great story to tell. It's sorry. I have no filter. I have no filter. I don't think these through when I say them. Um, yeah, let me see. What was the other stuff you had? Um, Oh yeah, we were talking about the manual testing, integration, test strategies, exploratory testing is exactly what we needed. All right, hey, let's see. I got 4 minutes. We got two. We have one more question. We'll make this the last one over here. Um, Kurandi, I hope I pronounced that right. Kurandi is asking where there any knowledge gaps Were there any knowledge gaps for people who knew and didn't know the robot framework? And if so, how do you bring everybody up to speed or to similar levels and expertise?
Okay. So yes, there were people who knew Robert robot framework, and there were people who had no experience in that. So what we did was extensive trainings. We had both external and internal trainers that would teach people how to use robot framework, and those that were familiar with we kind of divided those people into two categories: those that were knowledgeable, that were doing the more difficult work, like creating keywords, and that those people had more in-depth knowledge of robot, and the ones that had like zero to very small knowledge, we gave them trainings, and first they were just using existing keywords for their scripts before acquiring full knowledge and moving to the group that could do everything. So trainings, basically, I don't think that there is other way. Trainings and learning. Yeah.
That's yeah, hands-on experience with that is the best experience that you can have. I agree with that totally. In my experience, we've also done lunch and learns, where we just have everyone sit around and somebody says, "I'm going to show you something really cool I did in the framework. I was able to figure out this element, that element, or um, uh, other ideas." One of my other companies, the most recent one, actually it was two back. They promoted hackathons. They said, "Hey, it's Thursday and Friday, we are giving you permission. Put your work on hold unless it's really high priority. I was losing a ton of money. Put it on hold. Let's do a 48-hour hackathon. Show us what you can do." And that was cool. It actually was visible to higher level management. The downside was it bought us a lot more work. Like, this is cool, it's working now. I'm like, well, this is just a prototype. Like, well, what is it that we need to make it work? They're like, well, give me another assistant and a few more hours. That'd be great. um, but you got to make it fun.
Yep.
Make this stuff fun. I also recommend everybody out there, if you want to make it fun, if you wanted to learn a programming language and you want to make it fun, there is a company, a website out there. It's called Game Code and Game, CODINGAME. 22 different programming languages you can learn, and it's got a game embedded in the in IDE online, and the better your code, the better chance you can beat the game. If you beat the game, they show you everybody else's solution, and boy, are there a lot of interesting solutions out there. It's like, we could do a binary search, or we could try the Pythagorean theorem to try and figure out how to solve this whole thing. I don't know. Just keep it fun, all that stuff.
Yep.
Ewa, I'm going to say thank you so much for being our guest, and it's been a pleasure. We'll also have you back real shortly. It's been a fantastic time. You had really great information, and everybody, I hope you all enjoyed this. I believe next month we've got Larry Goddard back. Remember, me and Larry wrote a book. Uh, we're we're kind of pitching it out there. If you use WebDriver IO, or if you want to read some crazy stories of automation, please check it out. You can get it from Pack Publishing, or you can get it on Amazon. Look up my name, Paul Grossman. Ewa, again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Everybody have a great day. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.